Hello and welcome to the Olfactive Melbourne podcast. I'm your host, Trent Stokes.
And I'm Robin Stokes. We're a husband and wife team passionate about perfume, and we're on a journey to better understand and explore the art of perfumery. We're coming to you today from Melbourne, Australia, and we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're recording. They are the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to the elders, past and present, and we extend that same respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening to the recording today.
This show, we interview Australia's premier niche, artisanal and indie perfume brands, from the founders to the perfumers and on to the creatives who take us on a guided journey through a fragrance that best represents their brand. The show is wrapped around a masterclass in which we invite our guests to take us through each stage of the opening, the heart, and the base. The show unfolds in real time, meaning that there is time in between the opening and the heart and the base. And this is known as the dry down. During the dry down, we take the opportunity to deep dive into the perfumer's journey, their brand, their mission, their vision, their values, along with getting a better understanding of some of the technical terms in perfumery, along with how to identify individual notes and accords so that we can more deeply connect with perfumery, and also so that we can better identify the notes that we like and dislike. This allows us to make more informed decisions about the fragrances that we connect with and that we ultimately wear. The show is designed to be both educational and entertaining. So if you like what we do, please like and subscribe and make sure to sit back, relax and enjoy the show. The Olfactive Melbourne podcast is proudly sponsored by Watchvault, Australia's premier destination for luxury and vintage timepieces. Each watch is trusted, verified and ready for its next chapter. Visit watchvault.com.au to discover your next timeless investment.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Olfactive Melbourne podcast. Today, we're joined by Trung Vu, who is the creative mind behind Grimoire Parfums. Grimoire is an independent Australian brand that blends classical perfumery with storytelling and imagination. Welcome to the show, Trung.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you with us. Now, just to kick off, it would be wonderful if you could tell us when you first launched Grimoire and where you're based.
Yeah, so I am based right here down in Melbourne, and it actually hasn't been launched for too long. It was officially pivoted into the atmosphere October 12th. So yeah, it's very new. It's still in its infancy and there's still a lot of things to do and a lot of things to learn as well.
Congratulations on the launch.
Thank you.
Now, if you could tell us a little bit about the identity of Grimoire Parfum and what it means to you, that would be great.
Yeah, so Grimoire Parfums, it has been a project that has been in the works over the last 5-6 years. Something I always wanted to do, intended. You know, at the time I was working in perfumery, didn't know too much about the creation process. So I had my eyes set out to learn perfumery, and this was always like the objective. Grimoire, I always like to say, I've cycled through so many ideas over the years and thinking about like, what should I do as a brand? What will people connect with? All of that. But really, at the end of the day, you go back to the one you always originally intended because it's always the most personal. So yeah, I like to say Grimoire Parfums is just a manifestation of all the things I love, which is fantasy, fiction, religion, mythology, all these ideas, all things macabre and otherworldly. Yeah, it's all about kind of, like you said, blending classical ideas and kind of structures and techniques, making it artful, so creative, lots of storytelling, they're dark and a bit edgy, not necessarily challenging, but I would say highly stylistic.
Fantastic. We are looking forward to diving into this. This is an absolutely amazing brand. Now, you've actually brought your entire range in with you today. But obviously we select one particular fragrance to masterclass, and then we'll explore the broader range a little bit later in the show. So which particular fragrance would you like to select for the masterclass today, and why that particular perfume?
Yeah, so for today, I have selected Nephilim, which is titled number 1 or volume 1 from the region of Mesopotamia. And I think it probably represents the brand the best in a few different ways. Firstly, the story, but also terms of technical proficiency and style as well. And it's kind of like my little baby. It was a formula that took the longest to complete, probably about 4 years in the making. Yeah, I like to say it's kind of my personal pièce de résistance. For now, might get a few more later, but for now it is.
I'd say you've got many ahead of you, Trung. So we're really keen to get stuck into it and start smelling straight away. So I might ask Robin if you can spray us and spray some blotters. So just for those people listening, we are currently, Robin's currently spraying it out onto a set of blotters, and she's also going to spray it onto our skin. We always do this on the show because we like to get a really well-rounded sense of the fragrance. When you spray a fragrance onto your skin, the way the fragrance reacts to your skin, microbiome in your skin, the heat on your skin, this whole range of different factors that can push certain notes forward a little bit faster. You can smell something slightly different. Whereas when we've got the blotter, we are all smelling exactly the same thing. It's nice and consistent. Now, before we get stuck into actually having a smell, and I can already smell it, and I can't wait for you to go through the description here. This is an educational podcast, and we like to let our viewers know exactly what we're doing at every stage of the show. So what we're about to do on the show here is we're going to smell some opening notes. And when I say opening notes, what I'm referring to is our perfume pyramid. So the perfume pyramid is the traditional way in which we construct perfume. If we think about a pyramid, we have our peak right at the very top, and that's where our opening notes sit. Opening notes are made up of the lightest and most volatile of the aroma molecules. That means that they surface to the fragrance first, but they also dissipate the fastest, making way for the heart notes sitting right in the center of that perfume pyramid. Below that, we have our base, the widest section, and that's where we have our heaviest and our densest notes. Now, this is the traditional way in which we build a perfume. However, this is not always the way a perfume will unfold, but just for the sake of explanation, this is how we will experience our opening notes. So we're going to go through those opening notes now. So with that very long explanation of opening notes, Trung, what are we experiencing here as we have a smell?
Yeah, so in the opening, and most of my perfumes, if not all of them actually, they are built in a traditional perfume pyramid, where there is a transition from top to heart into base. And intentionally so, I think it's always something fascinating when a perfume gives you progression and different stories and layers as you wear it. It's something I love about classical perfumery as well.
What is a Nephilim? And why have we called the perfume Nephilim?
Yeah, so Nephilim is a story that actually appears in the Bible in the very first chapter or book in Genesis. And they are described as half beings or half-breeds. They are the children of a fallen angel and a female woman. And the fallen angels are the angels that are lost in the war or lost in the holy war against God. And the idea of Nephilim was to play on this idea of lust and transgression with that kind of unholy matrimony between two different species. It's a taboo of nature. So, it's a duality of sensuality, but also eroticism at the same time. So it's pulling on kind of different ideas. And yeah, that kind of contrast between comfort and lust is what I want to represent in Nephilim. With Nephilim, what you're smelling in the very opening is red wine. You've got pink pepper, lemon, angelica, and tomato leaf. And the funny thing about this fragrance is I have actually not built a red wine accord. There is not a red wine accord that exists in my perfumer's palette or arsenal, let's call it. And that's the kind of funny idea about perfume that's not really talked about much, is this idea of suggestion. There is such thing as placebo in perfumery. If I tell you something is in it, you are inclined to believe it. And what I've brought in today is actually a plum accord, which is what the original intention was. When I was workshopping the fragrance and going through all the series, this one was a long-winded one. It's gone through over 70 different reformulations. And probably about like 70, 80% the way through, I thought it needed a bit more of a fruity character, a bit more greenness to it. So I started to play with a plum accord that I had created about 4 years ago. So some of my very early work. And yeah, when I inserted it into the perfume, what I smelled was actually not really plum. And it's kind of the fascinating thing about the other notes having a hand in how things smell and how they blend together. And I've actually brought my plum accord in today for you guys to experience. And you can kind of see how it sits on its own and how it works in the perfume. And I am not a classically trained nose. So when I look at some of my very early work, I think I'm a bit crazy. It's definitely not something I would do these days. Yeah, it's the beauty of ignorance, let's say, or intuition rather. So in my early plumber cord, it was when I was looking through it again, it was actually 10% cypress, which is insane. It's a bit more of a technical detail, but yeah, insane. Let's actually give it a try, shall we?
Let's try this
give
plumber
it a
cord.
try.
I've got to say, just while you're grabbing that plumber cord, we've experienced a whole range of different notes in perfumery, and we know that a lot of the time, particular notes are left out of perfume. We don't necessarily list everything.
Correct.
Sometimes things are just supporting notes. Their job is to sort of fix or push forward other notes. They're there, but they're not significant enough to mention, or we deliberately leave them out. I don't think I've ever experienced a perfume where we've made a suggestion that something's there, but it's actually not. So this is actually quite, I don't know about you, Rob, but this is quite unique for me.
Yeah, it's totally unique for me too.
Yeah, it's something quite interesting.
When you said it, I was like, oh, wow.
It's a funny kind of point of interest, and it's actually a lot more common than you think. Yeah, because perfumery is all about, in a way, suggestion and perception. You know, you tell the audience what they want to believe or what you want them to believe also. But here you go. This is the plumber cord.
Thank you.
And when I create my cords, I try to get them as hyper-realistic as possible.
That's nice. I love that.
So a plumber cord, it's not a super difficult accord. Build it around a couple of different green notes, your rose ketones, kind of some of your aldehyde C14. But yeah, the reason I think it actually works as a red wine suggestion, let's say it, is because of that 10% cypress. And again, that's the beauty of intuition. Cypress is a conifer and it's got a lot of kind of terpenes in it, and so those wines, and naturally it just kind of worked out in my favor. It was a lovely mistake.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's obviously, you know, we're smelling the accord there, so it's quite strong, but you smell that and then you smell the perfume and you can smell the sense of it in there. I can completely understand why you've used this to suggest wine. It works with the other notes in combination with those other notes. I am definitely getting that suggestion. But now, because of the psychological, it's not quite warfare that you're engaging with me, but that psychological trickery, I can't tell now whether it's because of the suggestion or because I'm actually smelling it and it's the combination of notes. That is something quite unique and not something I was aware of in perfumery, that it was actually something common.
Yeah, no, I wasn't either. And I guess it's why some of the perfumers that we've talked to, they always say, oh, we love it when people just smell our fragrances without having any idea what the notes are and tell us what they think they can smell before they go off and look at the notes. So that, you know, it's kind of interesting from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of part of the storytelling. Like the red wine seems so ceremonial to the whole idea, especially like it's a religious kind of idea and it's almost like a covenant. So yeah, it definitely fits in with the theme. It's actually used a lot more, this idea of suggestion in perfumery than we think. Especially a good example is like building fruit accords. Fruit accords are probably some of the hardest to do, in my opinion, from a technical level. And the trouble with fruits is they just don't, or fruit molecules, they just don't last long. So what we do is play a bit of trickery. So if we open an accord with like, you know, your classic, for this purpose, let's say the plum accord, to kind of give the illusion of longevity, you would actually use vanillin or vanilla compounds to give it that sweetness into the dry down. But because we have that association with plum in the opening and the sweetness in the dry down, you actually still think it's plum that goes through the top and the height and into the base as well.
So I think this is just a really good call out for our viewers now, listeners here. I think when I recall the experience that Rob and I had when we first walked into our first niche perfumery, the person behind the counter, you know, sprayed out a perfume. I can't remember what it was, but they stuck it under our nose and said, "What can you smell?" And we both looked at each other and went, "Oh my God, I'm freaking out." And I could tell what she was thinking and I was thinking the same thing. What if we say the wrong thing? But the truth is, it doesn't matter. What you smell is what it is, right? So because we are working with accords are the construction of a note to represent the note, not the actual note. Even if you are using the actual note, if you smell something different, it's because it may have combined with something else to produce a different scent. Or you've got the suggestion, you've got the imagery, you've got the archetype that you've built it around, the story. There's a whole range of things that can affect how you experience it, because it's not just smell, is it? It's a sensory experience.
Correct.
You are smelling with your eyes, with your nose, you're feeling it on your skin. I mean, I can see the glistening on my skin right now from this from this fragrance. It's a whole experience. Now, there's another note that you have mentioned in the opening here that's I sort of feel like I should know, but I don't know. And that's Angelica. What is that?
It's pretty much a plant, but the part that we use in perfumery is the root, Angelica root. It is a very green note. It's almost kind of transparent, like it's different to galbanum and kind of violet leaf. It has almost like a bitter herbal medicinal touch to it. Not too much, very, very light. And it's one of those classic combinations that works really well with rose, which we'll get into a bit later. Yeah, and that's the whole idea. I think stylistically as well, like I use a lot of classic combinations and a lot of classic references. And, things that just work. Like I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but just doing it in my kind of own way.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to come back to the Angelica and Rose combo. But I wanted to ask about ivy because I noticed that was also in the top.
Yes, that is also just another suggestion as well. Again, just seems very ceremonial and pertinent to the story. Not that it has any relation to the Garden of Eden, but, it's in the same kind of territory. So, you have this kind of like unconscious kind of, it's a bit of subliminal messaging, but yeah, it's just another suggestion. I actually haven't built an ivy accord. I worked with a lot of green notes, but it's all about, I guess, audience psychology.
Yeah, I suppose when you think of ivy, and especially when we're talking about an old biblical story, your mind just associates ivy and this story.
Creeping plants and
absolutely. So the Nephilim. I just want to sort of circle back to the story for a moment, only because it's been a little while since I've been at school and I've actually studied this stuff. But so this war that you refer to, is that the war, I guess, that sort of sent Lucifer to?
Yes.
Okay, so that's that old tale. And so there was a war that waged, I think, in heaven. I'm really stretching my memory back here, and you could probably correct me here, but it was that Lucifer was jealous of humans? Was that the story, and that's why they waged the war?
I don't know, to be exactly sure. I think it was more like he wanted to overthrow God.
So he was going for the power.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously he didn't win. They got sent to Earth. And so then you had these angels that actually bred with humans, and the output of that relationship, so the babies that were born, are the Nephilim. And so they're their own sort of breed. They're not an angel. They're not a human.
They're kind of like these humanoid giants. And there's kind of different versions of them, depending on which story. Like it appears in the Book of Enoch as well, which is not canon to the Bible. In that take, I believe that the story of Noah's Ark, where the Great Flood occurs, was actually to rid the earth of the Nephilim, because they were giant and destructive beings. They were known to be chaotic.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting.
And so what we're capturing here in our opening notes is that, I guess, that sensuality of the meeting of the angels and the humans and the creation of these Nephilim beings.
It kind of sets the scene, and it kind of is a nod to me stylistically as well. I am not a botanical perfumer. I am a modern perfumer, so I use the full spectrum of the perfumer's palette. But stylistically, I do kind of pay a lot of respect to the botanicals or the naturals that go into it. I try not to adulterate them too much, and I do the best I can to enhance it and give them the frame they need to kind of shine in spotlight. So a lot of my work, you will find there's a lot of green elements because they're great naturalizers for these materials, because the natural extracts themselves don't necessarily smell like how they do in real life. So, how do you manipulate it to give you that kind of real life experience?
Absolutely. And a lot of these notes that, that we want to use in perfumery, it's just not possible to use a natural because there's just not a natural. There isn't enough within the flower or whatever it might be to actually use one of the various different extraction techniques that we've learned on the show. And so the only way to do that is to build an accord. And I guess good example of that is, and I know you didn't build a red wine accord. We've used a plum accord, but you couldn't just pour some red wine, into a perfume. It doesn't work like that. Same as leather, right? You can't just soak some leather in some liquid and extract the leatherness from it. You've got to build an accord, and this is the way perfume is constructed.
Yeah, and that's another great example of a kind of suggestion and association, because as we know, leather doesn't really have an inherent smell. The association comes from birch tar. And I think it was the Russians that were first doing it. They were using it to treat the leather, and it worked as like a great preservative and antiseptic. And it becomes association, suggestion, psychology. It all kind of goes together, hand in hand.
So what are you getting in the opening here? It's green and fresh to me in the opening. That's my sort of first impression. I think I'm getting some of the tomato leaf, but I'm definitely getting some lemon in here as well, as far as the citrus.
There is a lift or a little of some to the smell, but to me, it sort of comes at the end. If I have a big sniff, then it's sort of at the end. I get this little brightness and a bit of a pop.
And I think there's one key heart note that's starting to come through already here, but not so much on the blotter on my skin because of the heat.
Yes.
It's coming off my skin.
Yeah.
Fantastic set of opening notes. So we've got ivy, pink pepper, lemon, angelica, and we've got the tomato leaf as our opening notes. We're set, the story set around the Nephilim and some absolutely amazing bottles here. So great experience of the opening. What I'd love to do now, though, is I want to get to know you a little bit better. So take us back. You said that you've been on this journey of creating perfumes for many, many years now, but where did the interest in perfume actually first start in your life?
Yeah, well, I think for a lot of people, you kind of fall into it. It's not something I intended to happen. It just kind of, like, I guess, was a natural progression. So originally I started out, like, finished high school, was in uni, but actually dropped out to pursue a dancing career because I trained from a young age as a dancer, and that's what I wanted to do at the time. So I left uni, joined the company, trained full time, and then a few years later, I'd fallen in love with makeups, and the world of makeup was booming, social media was booming, and I kind of fell into it as well. So I went to school for that, became a makeup artist, worked as a makeup artist for a bit, ended up at Armani. I was a makeup artist for Armani, and naturally there were fragrances there, and that kind of, I guess, set my love for perfumery. Because there was the range that I had never experienced before called the Armani Privé. There was a lot more than just the smell. We all know Acqua di Giò, but had never experienced the Privé, and there was like artistry and sentiment and storytelling and quality. So it was a different caliber. And the thing about working retail is that they only teach you how to sell. They just tell you what's in it. There's bergamot, there's birch, there's violet and rose. But what is bergamot? I don't know what that is. So, I always had this kind of never-ending determination to learn more, know the ins and outs of actually what bergamot is, rather than simply being told that it exists in the perfume. So that's kind of where the journey began. And then, like a lot of people, COVID happened, and, you're contemplating what you want to do, what you want to achieve. So yeah, that's when I had set myself on that journey to having my own brand one day. Like, that was the objective. During COVID, I had started learning perfumery. I started buying books, reading them as much as I could. I probably spent about a year before I actually delved into raw materials. And that was just I think for me, theory is important. And I know that as a dancer and as a makeup artist, they're very classical art forms and there's a lot of technique involved. So I wanted to pay respect to perfumery as well, because I know it is a highly technical art form. And until this day, I still feel like it's actually more of a science than it is an art. So it's really interesting.
Really diverse background that you've got there. So gone from being a dancer to being a makeup artist, and then that makeup artist journey has taken you into a world-renowned brand that just so happens to sell perfume. And you've only been given a very superficial look at the range, and that sparked some curiosity around wanting to know a little bit more, and that set you on that journey.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a connection, because all of your previous careers, you have had amazing creativity in all of those. So that's obviously an innate part of who you are. But what made you decide to create your own fragrances rather than just be sort of like create the brand?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to artistic ego. I wanted to represent myself, who I am as an artist, my identity. And for me, it was never just about creating a brand and putting my name on it. I wanted it to be deeply connected to it. And this is more of a personal kind of pressure I put on myself. I think that there is something really special when it comes from yourself or the heart. And in the same way that, when a singer sings their own song instead of having someone else write it for you, or when a chef brings you the food to the table instead of the waiter, like, there's something magical that happens there that you can't explain. It's a kind of, there's nothing lost in translation. And, there are beautiful things that come from partnerships, from collaboration. But for me, this is always something that I wanted for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite the commitment to make. I would say that 90% of the people in your position that got really passionate about perfume and started to, I guess, understand the ingredients would very likely go and find a perfumer who would then create your vision on your behalf. But you've gone that extra step to actually learn the art of perfumery, sort of teach yourself. How did you actually go through the process of teaching yourself perfumery?
A lot of intuition, unfortunately. Perfume information, there is a lot out there, but it is very hard to find. You can scour the internet for days and not find any answers, but at the same time, there are a lot of answers as well. And yeah, it's a very technical art form, and I don't think I've been necessarily influenced as a dancer or a makeup artist, but I think it's actually given me the aptitude I need to kind of pursue this kind of journey. I can see why a lot of people kind of like stop halfway through, because there's
A lot of
I guess,
discipline.
no cap to it, to how much you can learn.
So I guess you mentioned there that there's a lot of information out there. And so you didn't pack yourself up and go, okay, I'm going to go and do a 4-year degree in France. You just went about finding that information yourself. I guess was that, you searched the internet, you bought books, is that basically what the process was for you?
Just process of experimentation.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. When I got my hands on my materials, you don't know what you're doing. You just kind of got to figure it out. But then, I did receive a bit of mentorship, connecting with people and different independent perfumers around the world online and giving me kind of little tips and tricks. They don't give everything away, so you are left to your own devices a bit. But a lot of my learning is also just from being a collector and a lover of perfume myself. I have quite a big collection, and where I love perfumery the most is kind of the great classics, vintage perfumery. So a lot of things from the 20s through to the 80s. Even when you smell things, now that I'm a bit more experienced, you can kind of see the structure, the technique, and how to dissect the fragrance a little bit better. So, it's like these reference pieces. As, any kind of case study as an artist you would do, you kind of reference all the paintings, like what made it great, what techniques have they employed. So it's the same kind of concept there.
So you've got a bit of a classical perfumery vibe about your perfumes, and it's inspired by that love of those sort of older perfumes.
Yeah, and I kind of like to say that even though I'm not classically trained, I think I am on my way there, as self-taught as I am. And I think that probably comes back to ballet or classical and contemporary ballet. It's all about, it's a very regimented art form. So I've always had great respect for technique and kind of learning the fundamentals and the foundations.
Well, given that you are so fresh at having set, a business up, like learnt the art, built your perfumes and launched a business, I'm very keen to understand that process. But just before you do, just because you've mentioned classical perfume, give us a few of your favorites. What are some of those classics that you absolutely love?
What I wear, what a perfumer wears, all those granny fragrances that you can think of. They're all on my top shelf. So Knowing from Estee Lauder, Bella Versailles, I love Kuros, Aromatics Elixir, all of them. Once You Gentleman from the 70s.
Wow, some real classics there.
Yeah. Knowing from Estee Lauder is one of the very early perfumes that I bought as well, which I've been thinking recently I should get a bottle for sentimental purposes.
You sort of wonder these days, though, like if you buy that now, is it going to smell and was it constructed in the same way? Yeah. We'll probably touch on Ifra a little bit later in the show, but I mean, I've smelled some pretty classic fragrances as well. We've obviously got a very old bottle of Chanel No. 5 that dates from the 60s. The ingredients that are in that bottle aren't likely in that bottle today due to some of those regulations. Fantastic. All right. All of us, perfume geeks are loving all of that. But while we're on the track of that process, take us through, what does it take to start a perfume business?
Yeah, so I am still in my infancy, so there's a lot of learning still left to do. And, it's strange. So last year, as you guys know, I've been working the retail fragrance space for a while now. Last year was about 18 months ago, I'd say, was the time I thought I won't say ready, but, 80% ready, because, you're never fully ready. You just have to take the leap of faith at some point.
Yeah.
So that's when I felt like, right, it's time to give it my all, put my time and effort full time into creating this world of perfumery and grimoire. And there was a few reasons it kind of took so long. One was capital. That takes a lot of money, especially if you want to do any form of customization, as I've learned. The amount you have to order is kind of insane.
Is that the customization of the bottles?
The bottles, the labels, the boxes,
everything.
The ribbon, the blotters, the bag. So there's always a minimum purchasing order for customization, which is, it's a kind of, how do you call it? Like a hurdle for a lot of brands or kind of brand owners out there getting started. Like it does take a lot of capital. And yeah, I'm kind of glad I was very frugal over the last 5-6 years and I had the contingency to save extra just in case I needed to spend more, because I actually probably end up spending about almost 3 times more than what I anticipated. What I anticipated to spend was not necessarily educational. It was just like a random ballpark number. But yeah, you know, you're in too deep. You know, you can't look at it anymore.
You're committed. You've jumped out of the plane already. You're already on the way down.
But on the other hand, you've been able to, you know, launch with amazing, unique bottle and, as you say, all the components of the box and everything, which from some of the other perfumers that we've spoken to, they've had to migrate to something more customized over time because they haven't, you know, they've started in a different way.
Absolutely. I mean, we've sprayed out Nephilim, but what we didn't do was actually show off these amazing boxes that you've got. So what I might do is I might grab one just to show the camera quickly. And for those people listening, we'll make sure that we post a link so that you can see this.
Because they are absolutely stunning. No doubt about that.
Yeah. So everything is about a grimoire. For those that don't know, a grimoire comes from Old French. It is pretty much a magical book. It is usually a book of dark magic, so it kind of relates to witchcraft, incantations, spell summonings, sometimes demonology as well. So everything about the brand is a motif of the book. I always kind of beat myself up for staying as long as I did in retail because I knew I wanted to do more. I knew I had the potential to do more. But in a way, it's kind of, there's a silver lining there and a blessing in disguise because it's kind of taught me a lot of things, taught me about branding, at how important identity is and what the selling points are. As much as perfume is about what's inside, like there is a very visual aspect to it as well. So I always knew that's what I wanted to achieve and put out into the world.
Yeah, I agree. Perfume it's quite visual. And I mean, perfume is not cheap. I mean, there's cheap perfume out there, but you get what you pay for, right? So if you're going to buy anything that's half decent, you're going to be spending a couple of $100s. If you're spending a couple of $100s on a perfume, you want the whole experience to be something special. From the box to the bottle, the cap has to be nice. The spray itself has to be beautiful. Every little touch needs to be something a bit special. And I always feel a bit hard done by when I buy a niche perfume or an expensive perfume and it lacks that. It's like there's no care that's been put into everything else because we consume it with our eyes before it ever goes onto our skin. I think it's really important. I've got to say, I mean, it's grimoire, the story's there, the box for the perfume is the book. It's just absolutely brilliant. There's not a single bit of detail that's been left off there. No wonder it took you quite some time to do.
It took a bit of time. And then, that's the art of luxury as well that I've kind of developed that skill over time, as much as we don't like the word luxury these days. But, it's all about the details. It's the kind of small gestures that you don't really notice, but they are there and they kind of tie the whole package together.
Yeah. So did you do the designs?
I did actually. Yeah, the funny thing is, this is a bit of advice for anyone starting out. I did do the designs. I didn't know what I had planned to do with it. I had a general kind of faint idea, but it was a lot of improvisation. I wanted to save money where I could, so I just ended up doing everything myself. And when you go to a manufacturer, they don't really collaborate with you at that level that you think they might. Their first question is, all right, how many units? And give me the design. So I was like kind of not starstruck, not the right word, but I was in shock in a way because I didn't know what I was expecting. There's no one to hold your hand when you do these things. So I was actually playing with AI for a little bit, trying to see if they could create a lid for me, and nothing was just working. It wasn't practical. So I took my sketchbook out, just started drawing things, sent it off to the manufacturer, and they're like, actually, we need a technical sketch. We need all the measurements, all the angles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did that. They come back to me, okay, we actually need it in vector format. Learn how to do that. We need a 3D rendering now. Next step. So the 3D rendering was the only thing I outsourced because I would have had no idea.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of things I've learned along the way as I've done it. A lot of other kind of business and compliance things as well.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've learnt the art of perfumery. You've learnt how to draw and design.
Industrial
and then
design.
move into the Adobe Creative Suite so that you can actually provide all of the technical drawings and you've done everything from scratch. Now, I've done a little bit of packaging in the corporate world before, and I certainly know what you've encountered there. They don't help you at all.
No.
If you give them something that's not quite right, they'll manufacture something that's not quite right for you. They do exactly what you've asked them to do, unless they actually can't do it, and that's when they'll get a little bit of clarity from you. So probably a really good lesson there for anybody who is wanting to set out. You've got to think of everything here, from the packaging right through to the juice itself. So yeah, it's quite a complex process. Now, you mentioned there that custom means quite a lot of quantity as well. You're probably going to need space to be able to store the quantities of packaging and bottles and all that sort of stuff as well.
My garage is full to the brim at the moment. For my caps, I had to order 3,000 units to begin with, which is actually quite a generous deal. The industry standard is actually 10,000 units. I was shocked. It's still a lot, and it's a big startup cost. There's no way around it. This is what you have to, not necessarily sacrifice, but this is what you have to pay for.
Yeah. It's all in.
Absolutely. I think you're going to move through that pretty quickly, to be honest. So absolutely, because it's beautiful, and we're going to explore the broader range a little bit later in the show, and people get to understand exactly why I've just made that comment. But before we do that, I think we actually should explore the heart notes.
This edition of Olfactive Melbourne is proudly brought to you by Silver Australia. Silver Australia design and shape their jewellery in their studio in Melbourne, and they're pleased to offer Olfactive Melbourne listeners 20% off when you use the code MASA20. So we'll just go back to the perfume pyramid for a moment and describe the heart notes. So the heart notes form the center of the perfume pyramid, and generally they start to surface once the top notes begin to fade, and they can feature things like florals, spices, or sometimes aromatic herbs that define the character. And this is where the heart of the perfume really comes into its own. Its whole character really blossoms. It will be the bridging to create a smooth transition between the bright top notes and the richness of the base notes, and it lingers and leaves a beautiful memory. So with that being said, please take us through the heart note.
Yeah, so in the heart notes, it is all about the floral and what the core of the fragrance is. So it is Bulgarian rose, and there's actually 3 types of Bulgarian rose in there. There is French rose as well, and then it's kind of a medley of different florals to kind of help transition the top into the heart, and some help to transition the heart into the base. So we've got lavender, geranium, elderflower, and a bit of kind of odd material here called choya loban as well.
Well, look, I mean, we have to start with the rose because to me, it's quite prominent on my skin. So tell us why you chose to put 3 different types of Bulgarian roses and the French rose. What does the French rose bring?
Yeah, so French rose or centifolia rose is usually a lot more jammy. So I wanted to use that to bring an element of sweetness to the fragrance. But the Bulgarian rose, I think, is much more sensual, which is what I wanted to use for Nephilim as the kind of main component to represent this idea of sensuality, which was the rose. The Bulgarian rose, the species is damask rose or rose damascena. It has a lot more kind of powdery spice nuances to it. It's a lot more deep and kind of more sensorial as well compared to the French rose. Again, this choice to use 3 different roses was kind of to help it give a bit more space in the perfume, helping it to kind of project into the opening, have that body or that space or that presence in the heart, but also carry through into the base as well. And usually you can't do that with one material or natural alone. You need to kind of play with different materials and different aroma chemicals and compounds as well. A very classic rose structure or rose molecules that you need in the opening would be rose oxide, because it's very volatile, it's very bright in the opening. And for the base, you need like rose crystals to give it that longevity. But they're more the supporting notes. And I am using rose oil, which is actually probably one of the crown jewels in my palette or repertoire, which I brought for you guys here to smell.
Okay.
Are we lucky?
Yes, we
I've
are.
got to say, you just mentioned before that, the rose punches through that opening. I did sort of allude to that to start with, because you can, when you first spray this on, you do get the rose coming through sort of straight away. Not as prominent as it is now. Now it's really blossoming, I would say. But I think you did a really good description there before, that the heart note really sort of bridges, both the opening and the base there. And I think this rose is a really good demonstration of that.
Yeah, and this is like the magic of the fragrance that I love about it. Like it's just the way the rose oil blooms in the heart, and there's nothing like it. It's so magical, and as good as we can build our accords, nothing compares to the naturals. There is just a level of magic and chaos that you can't get when you build an accord, and it's all that volatility in the natural, all the imperfections of it as well that come through. Rose oil. This is by LMR, which is kind of like a faction of IFF.
Okay.
They are probably the Rolls Royce for materials. So it is very pricey, but that's also reflected in my products as well, or the price of the products. But yeah, it's just so creamy, so decadent, and has kind of these like strawberry tones to it as well. So on to you guys.
I look forward to having a smell. So one of the things that we probably haven't done a lot on this show is have a discussion about where a lot of these materials are sourced from. So you mentioned IFF as being the Rolls Royce. What are some of the other places that you can, I guess, get these type of raw materials from?
Yeah, so there's like 4 or 5 main manufacturers. We've probably heard of them. So Firmenich, Givaudan, Simrise. They're kind of like the main manufacturers for kind of aroma chemicals. And then for like your naturals, just put that down. For your naturals, there's kind of like a big 5. So LMR, which is a faction of IFF, is kind of gold standard. And they are great for sustainability. They work direct with the farmers, and it's fair wage, ethical, traceable. And some of the other ones, Robertet, old company. I think they've been around probably since the 1800s.
That long.
Do correct me if I'm wrong. Maine, Payon Bertrand. You've also got Floral Concepts. So there's lots of these great kind of manufacturers of naturals, and they all have great kind of ecological footprints as well. And they're always renewing their technologies to be as green as possible. So I think it is important where you source your materials from.
Yeah.
And it shows in the fragrance. You can't kind of hide that fact. But also as a perfumer, especially after doing all this compliance work myself, I think it's very important to get it from reputable places because they have all their documentation ready. They have their SDSs, they have their EFRA certificates. They've done their GCMSs on their materials. It tells you exactly what allergens are in it.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing your own paperwork. Australia doesn't really have like a GCMS service that I know of. Okay. If anyone out there does, please send them my way because it will save me a lot of work. Yeah, that stuff is kind of important, especially for like compliance is one thing, but also for health and safety as well.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, people are putting this on their skin.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you're putting your name on this perfume. Yeah. And so you definitely want to be playing it safe. And I'm sure there's quite a lot of complexity around making sure that you're compliant. It makes it a hell of a lot easier if you go into a really reputable source to start with. One thing I just don't want to gloss over here is you've just passed us over a raw,
amazing,
beautiful raw ingredient. And what I would encourage our listeners and our viewers to do is do this yourself. Get hold of some of these raw ingredients. You might not be able to get something at this level that Trung has brought in, but something quite magical happens when you smell the raw ingredient and then you smell the perfume. You can actually start to pick out the individual notes. It makes it a lot easier. I think this is sort of like training your nose to be able to identify notes. Otherwise, because it's so beautifully blended, it's hard to pick out the individual pieces of it. But as soon as you handed that to me, I had a smell. I passed it back to Robin, had a smell. But now I can identify it. So if you're interested in educating yourself on perfume, this is probably a good place to start. Is pick out those raw materials, start training your nose so that you can identify those individual notes.
Yeah, and who doesn't love to smell natural rose, right? Because it's such a high vibration.
Yeah, the thing is like it doesn't smell like real life roses. Like it has a very different profile. And rose oil is one of those. It's a very rare case where the rose oil is actually a lot more expensive than the absolute. Usually it's the other way around. And like it has to do with like how much it yields from the starting weight of your raw material to how much oil it produces. So it's a very rare case. So rose oil is probably about 3 times more expensive than the absolute. So it is crazy.
And that's just the volume of roses they need to use just to get enough oil out of it. So it's a high effort, isn't it, to extract rose oil. So you also mentioned, as we were going through those notes, a very strange sounding ingredients. Is it choya lobam?
Yeah, choya loban.
What is that?
It is kind of only an ingredient you see in artisanal work and independent brands. You'll kind of see it every now and then from a lot of independent brands. Very peculiar material, not something you see in commercial perfumery just because it's not produced at that volume. Like it's not scalable in a sense. But it is pretty much frankincense turned into a tar. So choya it's an ancient distillation technique that falls under the category of destructive distillation. Destructive distillation, you've experienced some of destructive distillation before. There's not very many. There's probably only 4 or 5 that I know of. It is the process of when material is kind of heated at high temperature in a vacuum with no oxygen. And what happens is when the kind of aromatic essence kind of starts to seep out, it gets burnt and it transforms into something completely new.
Oh.
So 2 examples that you probably know of destructive distillation is a birch tar. So it's usually your tars. So birch tar is one, and also cade oil as well. Yeah, the problem with those 2 examples are they actually produce a lot of carcinogens as well, called PAHs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So when you use those materials, you have to buy rectified versions where they have those compounds removed. And even then, it's still restricted to like near nothing, but you don't need that much. It's such a powerful material. So choya is a similar kind of method. It's the same kind of burning of the material, but it's done in earthenware. And the other choya is choya nak, which I use in one of my fragrances as well. And that is the burning of crushed seashells. And it's a co-distillate of sandalwood as well. So it's actually burnt together.
So interesting. So can I just make sure I understood that? It starts off as a resin of some sort, and then it becomes an ash. Is that or a smoke or something else through this process?
So it's kind of like you extract the essence out of it, so the kind of raw essence comes out of the raw material, and then under that high heat, it transforms into like that tar.
Okay, sorry.
And then, you kind of just dispose of the solids after it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very interesting.
Just when we thought we couldn't learn about any more techniques, here comes another one. It seems like it's endless, the number of different techniques in perfumery. I have no idea how you navigated your way through as a self-taught perfumer with just the volume of different distillation techniques that you can use, the different notes that you use, how to even combine those notes. No wonder the journey took so long.
Yeah.
It's quite a complex process, although so very interesting.
You can't stop learning perfumery. Like there is no cap.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. Yeah, that's what we love about the show, right? Because we get to learn about it all from the masters, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Now, you've got not only do you have beautiful bottles and you have really beautiful boxes, but you've also got a really beautiful website. And I jumped onto your website and I did a little bit of research before you came on. And I've got a quote here from you, which is, "I'm not here to reinvent perfume. I simply want to make perfume that smells good." And so I think this is a good little segue into, I guess, your approach and your philosophy to perfume. And I think you did touch on it a little bit in the opening. I guess how would you describe your approach and your philosophy to the construction of perfume?
Yeah, so that does sound a bit more dramatic than what it actually is intended to be. You got to be a bit dramatic for the website. Yeah, I think in the world of perfumery today is not like it was, as we call it, the golden era of perfume. Perfume is a bit more of kind of a commentary on the world of perfume at the moment. At a commercial level, it's definitely not the same. It's a bigger monopoly than it ever was. And, brands are getting picked up left, right, and center from bigger kind of entities. And, they kind of have to play it safe. So, artistry is kind of taking a bit of a backseat and it's more about the numbers, how much they're selling. And, for me, I just kind of want to bring the artistry back into it. Yeah, so it's not about reinventing perfume. I just want it to smell nice, like as dumbfounded as that sounds.
I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, it's the right approach, right? Perfume's about smelling nice. You don't necessarily have to make something that is super challenging and difficult to wear just for the sake of it to demonstrate your artistic nous.
True.
Because you could put it on and go, wow, I don't want to wear that. Like it's unique, but I don't want to actually put it on. So far, I have smelled all of your perfumes before. There's nothing there that is overly challenging. That doesn't mean it's not complex, but nothing smells unpleasant. We've smelled a number of unpleasant
Yeah.
perfumes, haven't we? Where we've
Yeah,
gone,
we have.
we really want to like this,
Yeah.
but we can't because it just doesn't smell nice.
But then there's also comment, a lot of people will comment, I like the smell, but I don't want to smell like that.
Yeah.
Right. So it could be a gourmand or something along those lines where it smells yummy or you want to eat it, but you might not want to necessarily wear it all day to the office.
Absolutely. Now, you've touched on a really important point here that, I mean, you are an independent perfumer. You're a niche perfumer, I guess an artisanal perfumer, but the industry is dominated by big brands, not many of them. So while we might walk into Myer or David Jones, and you've worked in retail, and we see brand after brand after brand after brand, they're actually, all of those brands are actually owned by like 3 or 4 companies. So it's companies like Estee Lauder, LVMH Group. These companies own hundreds of those brands. And so while you might see Tom Ford or you might see a Chanel, they're all just sitting under one banner, being made by one company. Yeah, they're all made by different perfumers, but once you fall under this big corporate banner, you can only operate under pretty strict regime. One of those rules, I guess, or that regime is that it has to be very profitable. And so, what are you sacrificing when you need to make things profitable?
Artistry.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also like a trend that I think is really unfortunate at the moment, where not so much in the niche houses, but sometimes the perfumers aren't even credited anymore, which I think is such a shame.
Yeah,
it seems to be the realm of niche perfumery where you'll actually credit a perfumer with that particular perfume. But once it falls under one of these major houses, you wouldn't know who makes that particular
And it wasn't
perfume.
always like that. Like they always used to like credit the perfumers. It's only been in I've noticed in maybe the last 5 years where.
And you can sort of see how those perfumers have rebelled a little bit against this as well by going out and starting their own brands or working with some of those niche houses so that they can be credited. And I've got to say, I guess when I was growing up with perfume, in the 80s, I didn't really know who the perfumers were. These days, we know who the perfumers are. They're rock stars these days.
And it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. Like, I haven't thought about it, but yeah, Alberto Marias has his own brand now. Dominic Ropion has his own brand.
What's your view on the Australian perfumery market?
Australian perfume, I think there is a lot of potential and space for Australian perfume to grow. There's a lot of great artisan perfumers out there. It's just very hard. And starting my own business, I can understand why. Like, it takes a lot of capital to get it out there. And Australia's just in a kind of unfortunate spot where it's so far from everything, and shipping is a big kind of cost, and import tax and duties as well. But there is a lot of potential, I think. Yeah, I think I would like to see a bit more kind of modern perfumery come out from Australia. I think because we're very grounded as a culture, so there's a lot of natural and botanical perfumery here. I would love to see a bit more kind of like modern, not necessarily experimental, but the full range of the perfumer's palette.
A little bit less safe in terms of pushing the edges a little bit more. So
more identity.
Yeah, a bit more identity. I think identity it's huge.
Yeah, I think
in perfume.
I think so. The more I am into perfumery, the more I appreciate that a strong identity means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's a lot of perfumes out there, and if you don't stand for something, I mean, you're just going to drown amongst everything else. And I think this is what you've done very, very well here, is that you've brought a very strong sense of identity and a very strong sense of story. And every single one of the fragrances has not only the identity of Grimoire and that idea of those dark tales, but they've got their own individual story, which is quite detailed.
What it provides is a connection with the consumer, right? Which I think, what makes you stand out when you're seeing all these products and you're smelling a whole heap of things. If you have a connection, or you've heard the story, or you've, got some connection to it, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's very important. What's not funny, but what was also important for me as well was like, as glamorous as the story was, I wanted it to, be objectively good as well. To remove all the story, you don't know anything about it. I wanted it to still be an experience. And that was like my kind of, I guess my kind of threshold or benchmark.
Yeah. Makes
I think
sense.
sort of feeds back into the statement about you just want to smell good.
Just want to
Because
smell good.
at the end of the day, I mean, if it doesn't smell good, you can tell as many stories as you want
Yeah.
about the perfume,
Yeah,
and it
that's
still
also
doesn't
true.
smell good, and people don't want to wear it. And
Yeah.
ultimately, it's about smelling good and having a beautiful experience. And I think the thing that we're really attracted to with perfume is that perfume's beautiful. It's just a beautiful thing, and who doesn't want to be experiencing more beautiful in their life? And it's ultimately it's got to smell good. So, I mean, I've been sitting here now looking at these fragrances for a while. I'm so keen to jump in. So we've got 5 total in the range here. Obviously, we're doing the masterclass around Nephilim, but which one do you want to get stuck into first as we explore the broader range?
Yeah, we might as well go in order. Each fragrance is numbered. They're numbered volume 1 through to 5, which is a bit nod back into the concept of the book. And on the back of the book, you've got the region and also the name of the fragrance. So fragrance number 2 is from the Balkan region. It is, I should preface though, my debut collection is called Ex Fabularum, and it means of the stories in Latin. So each fragrance tells a different story or a different folklore from a region. And what I wanted to do with each fragrance is capture the emotion of the story, but also pay respect to the culture that it comes from. So a lot of the materials will come from there as well, or a lot of the references are from the culture. So this one is of Slavic mythology. It's called Todorat. It is a fragrance that kind of represents destruction because the story is destruction. It's very powerful and unapologetic. It is the powerhouse of my collection.
You can't miss it. As soon as you spray it, it's yeah.
Absolutely.
And yeah, the story goes during the wintertime in Eastern Europe on the eve of St. Theodore's Day, these kind of giant creatures appear, and they're a hybrid of a human and a horse. Not so much like a centaur. The human torso actually grows out of the horse's back. And they're usually veiled and clothed. Their face is veiled, and they have long robes. And what they do is they just kind of ravage and stampede the villagers. So it's a story of destruction, and the only way to kind of stop them is the village people will have to bake a cookie in the shape of a hoof and feed it to the horse. So there's a bit of a whimsical element in there.
This is a intriguing smelling fragrance. Now, obviously, when we get to this section of the show, we can't go all the way through the dry down. So can you just take us through the opening, the heart, and the base notes? Obviously, we can only smell the opening notes here, maybe a little bit of the heart coming through, but what are all of our notes here?
Yes, I'll go through the actual accords or the kind of idea or concept first.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a tribute to Serbia, which is where a lot of my chosen family is from. So it's everything, it's a bit cliche in a way, but it is the smell of different European or Balkan liquors. So one is called Pilinkovac, which is a bitter herbal liquor made from Artemisia. Another liquor is Slivovica, which is plum rakia. It's kind of like the equivalent of a brandy.
Okay.
And you've also got Queen's brandy as well, which is Dunjevaca. And the base is beeswax, which is a nod to the Orthodox Church because they only use beeswax candles. And then there's just a hint of cigarettes as well because, it wouldn't be Eastern Europe without it.
Without some cigarettes, absolutely.
And yeah, and there is a kind of overlying chocolatey brioche note, which is a nod to the cookie in the story. So I try to, where I can, I'll try to kind of give a nod to the story.
Wow.
So the notes you're actually smelling, I won't go through all of them, but just the main kind of notes. In the opening, it's Artemisia, you got celery, you got star anise. In the heart, it is immortale, which I actually do have immortale here for you guys to try. It's a very interesting material.
I haven't smelled raw immortale
No,
before.
me neither.
No, so it's not really used. It's not uncommon, but it's not featured much. It is the key ingredient of my fragrance, which is also why the fragrance is so dark, as you guys can see. All of my fragrances are uncolored, so that's the actual natural absolutes and the oils coloring them. Immortale Absolute, there's very few examples of where it is actually featured in a fragrance. I do know Anikotal did one called Sabs, and there's one called Bodimaki di Sad from Histoire du Parfum, which I really love. It's a great fragrance.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's give it a try, shall we?
Absolutely.
Look
Yeah.
how dark that juice is.
Yeah. It's extremely dark.
This is boozy, isn't it? I mean, that's what I
It's
get.
boozy, but when you said celery, I was like, oh.
Yeah, and I think the beeswax is...
You can definitely smell the beeswax.
Yeah. Yeah, first impression I got was definitely that
Thank you.
boozy smell. And now that you've given us the story around it, yeah, absolutely makes sense. All right, so this is Immortale Absolute. All right, so this is my very first experience of this. I'm looking forward to this.
I would not know how to describe that.
Yeah, it's a very peculiar note. It's
Mm.
quite multifaceted. It's got elements, so it has a very distinct maple kind of odor to it, comparable to fenugreek. And sometimes it's actually called the curry plant. It's also known as everlasting flower. So it's got a fenugreek element to it, that maple tone. It's also quite ambery and lavender-esque as well. It's a very dry material. The absolute's very different to the essential oil. It has like this very gingery aspect. It's not really used in perfumery. It's more in aromatherapy. But yeah, a very beautiful kind of magical material.
That's a good way to describe it as rich. That is not what I
No,
had in my
I don't know
mind
what I was
whatsoever.
thinking anyway.
And again, same experience that I had before smelling the raw ingredient. Once I've smelt it and then I'm putting the blotter to my nose, now I'm starting to detect it.
And here's another one, another main kind of ingredient I brought for you guys to experience. This is Beeswax Absolute from Robert Ted. The Imital was from Maine. And
Thank you.
contrary to what we think, it's actually not that sweet. It has more of a salty, it's not too animalic, but there is a kind of trace of it, but it's almost like a umami kind of quality to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very complex. I like the smell.
Yeah, I mean,
that.
before you just described it there, I was expecting the honey type of smell, but yeah, you're right. It's actually not all that sweet.
No.
It's intense, but it's not honey sweet at all.
So in the actual fragrance, I've sweetened the kind of honey accord, and have built a honey accord for the fragrance.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Let me smell the blotter again. Okay, I can see what you mean. Already, even on the blotter, because we know that the blotter, it takes a bit of time for the dry down to occur. This is evolving actually quite quickly on the blotter as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that every time I have a smell, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the interplay between the raw ingredients and what I'm smelling now as well, which is probably playing around with my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'd say this is quite a complex fragrance.
So it's quite interesting texturally as well. This is the one I'd probably paired with texture. So it's a very dry, there's a lot of kind of dry array of notes in there. The Immortal is one of them, but also the hay and the tobacco. Then it also has this very syrupy kind of gourmand quality, but not enough to call it a gourmand. It's kind of, it's a bit of a grey area, like what you would categorize it. It's herbal, it's boozy, it's sweet, but it doesn't really fit into anything.
It's very gorgeous.
Okay, so when you say when you're playing with texture, you mean the dry, the sweet, the interplay of these different sort of elements is texture.
Yeah,
really
it's interesting.
This beautiful fragrance, and I can see. I mean, the story matches the fragrance, and I guess this is probably a good time to ask you, I guess, where do you start? Do you start with the story, or do you start with the fragrance, or is it a combination? You make a fragrance and then you go, oh, that story will fit, or I mean, what's the process there for you?
So there's no right way around it. I generally start with the story first. I actually choose the name, and before I choose the kind of fragrance notes, and the notes will kind of be built around that. I have this little thing I do. It's silly, but it's very quirky. I will kind of build a diagram of how I want the fragrance to look in Canva. I like to call it my poor man's Fragrantica. So I've just kind of copied all the images and put it into the Canva database. And I'll kind of play around, what do I want to feature, what it will look like, because it kind of gives you a visual idea of what a fragrance would smell like. So yeah, I kind of build it like that.
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay, and that gives you the mental image of it, and then you go through the process of actually playing around with those individual ingredients and tweaking and balancing it out so you get your fragrance. Intriguing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love this.
Yeah, and the concept always changes over time. I think we're always very ambitious when you start out. You have so many different ideas and a lot of different accords you want to do. Yeah, as you work at the fragrance, so not the problem, but one of the kind of hurdles of perfumery is like you never know what it smells like until you finish blending. So you don't know if it's going to work or not. Yeah, usually most of the time you'll find that it doesn't work. Edit things, take things out. I'll probably end up with probably a third to a half of the accords I originally created for the fragrance, just because they don't mesh together. I think there's a learned skill in a way as an artist, the ability to edit and kind of just, taste level.
Yeah.
So just keep playing around with it until you make it work. So you might get 90% of the way there, and then you'll add that final accord or that final note, and it just doesn't work. And so you might remove something, or you might keep that in and delete something else to make the whole thing work.
And yeah, when I think I've finished the fragrance, not that everything is ever finished. I think there's a famous saying around painting where it goes along the lines of, a painting is never finished. It's just merely abandoned. So it's kind of the same kind of concept for me. I stop working on the fragrance when I think there's nothing left to take out.
Okay.
So typically, and I think you might have mentioned it at the top of the show, but so forgive me if you have already answered this question, but typically, how many iterations does it take you before you're happy, or is there just not a typical?
Not necessarily a typical. The first one did take me the longest. That was about 70 iterations.
70.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other ones, I want to say they're about, aside from number 4, which took me about 12 or 13 iterations, that one finished surprisingly quick. The others were about 20.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a labor of love. 70.
It's definitely a labor of love. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Oh, that is absolutely lovely. I love that fragrance. I love a good boozy fragrance. All right, let's move on to volume 3. I should say volume 3. And this is going to, just while Robin's spraying this one out, this will remain the naming convention in a grimoire, the volume. So we'll go from, obviously we get to volume 5 today, but when you release your next fragrance, it'll be volume 6 and so on and so forth.
Correct. Yeah.
With no end, I guess. At least for now.
For now.
Okay, so we're at volume 3. What's this one called?
This one is called Nerkin, and it is a story from the Scandinavian region. Comes in a few different names, or it's known as a few different names, the creature. Sometimes known as Nix or Nixie as well, just depending on which country the story originates from. But yeah, this particular name is from Norway, but you do see it in Denmark, Finland, a bit of Germany and Amsterdam as well, which is a bit lower. But the Nerkin, it is a water spirit. It is a creature that lives in different bodies of waters in Scandinavia. They're a shape-shifting creature. One of its kind of most prominent forms is in the guise of a beautiful male with long hair, and that plays the violin. And they play it so beautifully that it lures whoever's listening into the water, where the Nerkin actually drowns them. Yeah, it's not a happy ending.
So a little bit like a siren.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I've got to say, if you have discovered this podcast and you're coming back to it, I'd say hit pause, grab the experience pack, the sample pack, and come back and smell along with us. Because something amazing happens when you tell the story. The fragrance evolves as you're telling the story. It's amazing sort of mental interplay between the notes and the actual story that you're telling. As you describe this water spirit, I was getting more and more of those watery type of notes coming through before you've even discussed a single note that's coming through here. I think you need to experience the fragrance along with the story. I think it's such an important part of the identity of grimoire. But just as you tell the story, it's quite amazing what's happening, at least in my mind.
Yeah, definitely perfectly connects. The story and the fragrance connect very well to me.
Yeah, and that was my intention, to kind of, the abstraction of smell into a story is kind of where the art lies. As much as it is a technical art form, that's kind of the art side of it. And so with this fragrance, I wanted to play on this. It's kind of different stylistically to the other 4. It's probably the least perfumey, I'd say. And it plays more on the idea of hyperrealism. And what I mean by that, I wanted it to smell as true to life as possible. So it's all about imagery, this one. And the image I'm trying to capture is the lakeside forest in all of its glory, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I wanted you to smell is the trees, the wildflowers, the berries, the mist, the kind of cold air, the water, the algae, the fungi, a bit of that rain as well. So that's the kind of image I wanted to capture.
It definitely evokes the sense of being in the outdoors. And as you say, because we're hearing the story of water, you connect it with that. But it is more than that. You can, now that you've described all that imagery of nature, it's captured.
You get all of that, that story of someone making their way through the forest towards the water, like they're being called. It's getting that misty forest, mossy. Yeah.
And it's kind of meant to feel a bit dangerous as well, like when you're alone in the forest. I love Nordic noir, so it's kind of like an ode to that. The kind of danger of solitude in a way, as peaceful as the forest is. That's kind of the kind of emotion I wanted to capture. And what you're actually smelling in the fragrance, it's a lot of green notes, there's a lot of berry notes, and a lot of conifers as well. So in the opening, you've got blackcurrant, which I brought for you guys to smell. Blackcurrant is one of those really interesting naturals. There's very few natural fruity smells. Blackcurrant is one of them. Osmanthus, Savannah, another few. But it's very rare to have anything that is naturally fruity.
What a treat to be
Oh,
able to actually
makes
smell
me
these raw
happy.
ingredients as we go along as well, because it really does help identify the notes in perfumery. And so, as I mentioned before, if you are the type of person who does struggle to just distinguish individual notes when you smell a perfume, what an ideal way to actually train your nose to smell. So what we're smelling here is, sorry, you said it was black currant?
Yes, blackcurrant, absolute.
Fantastic.
Sometimes you'll see it called cassis, which is just a French way of saying it. It's a very peculiar material. You know, when you hear blackcurrant, you think it's going to be something sweet and kind of syrupy, but I won't say it's too far from that, but it has very kind of interesting aspects and a little bit off-putting as well. So it is actually quite sulfuric in nature, and it is likened to the smell of cat piss sometimes. So it does have urinic qualities to it, but you do have that kind of sweet, kind of iodine-like quality from the blackcurrant.
This is not a foreign concept
you.
to us on this show. Like, I haven't smelled anything.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's kind of nice, and it's also got that element of, as you say, cat piss. Yeah, but somehow it works.
Yeah, I mean, we've
Very
smelled
interesting.
indoles before, which is the I guess the poo type of smell.
I love Indol. I work a lot with Indol.
Okay, yeah. Wow. Okay, that's a good description, isn't it? That's a challenging smell, but it's not unpleasant.
It's not like it's not like an animalic.
Smell it again.
Yeah, I know. It's like the very first smell. Is challenging for sure.
Yeah.
But then as you smell it again and you smell it again, it's a little bit addictive. It's wow, how unique.
Because I think I was sort of thinking before you told us about this, Trung, that it was going to be a bit like a Ribena kind of smell, but it's not.
Yeah, no, it's not at all.
Yeah.
Really.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of our jobs as a perfumer, is to take these naturals and give them the support and the background they need to smell pleasant, because sometimes they don't smell that way in their raw state. But it also gives you like a greater appreciation for perfumes that are using natural blackcurrant, where you pick up those kind of off notes and like, they're using the real stuff.
Absolutely. And when you think about the raw ingredients of a lot of things, they don't say taste very nice. If you were to take all of the raw ingredients of beer, it doesn't taste like beer, does it? Right. So, you've got to combine them using that sort of alchemy of being a perfumer.
Yeah.
Before you actually get that nice taste. And it's the same with the smell of perfume. So yeah, quite unique, but it's definitely a challenging smell, but when you combine it.
Yeah. So in the opening, you've got blackcurrant. There's a lot of aromatics in green. So black pepper, blackberry. There's galbanum and cypress and shiso as well. Also known as perilla, which is like that big leaf you have in Korean cuisine that you wrap your meat in.
Okay.
In the heart is all about the conifers. So you've got the fir balsam, which I brought for you guys. And I'll go through the notes first as well. So fir balsam, hemlock absolute, which is another kind of unusual conifer. A bit of baronia, which is a Tasmanian flower. It's very nice and fruity. And that's one of the other kind of rare naturally fruity kind of natural compounds. In the base, it's all about the vetiver, just to ground it down. A lot of oak moss and cedar and guaiac.
Definitely grassy, mossy.
Yeah, and then you get those conifers all
Absolutely
coming through.
I love that there's hemlock in here. Not that I can tell you what I'm smelling here is hemlock, but hemlock and grimoire.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's just the vibe, right? It's the right vibe.
Thanks.
Yeah, so fir balsam absolute. It's not quite like smelling fir needles, which has a lot more kind of a piercing kind of terpenic quality. But the balsam is actually quite sweet and has this kind of like syrupy texture to it.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, I'm getting
shocked.
Swedish sauna kind of smell from that.
Again, not what I was expecting. I've been shocked by everything I'm smelling today, because it doesn't smell like the description places in your mind. This is super sweet, isn't it? Wow, it's not
beautiful.
like a lolly sweet, just yeah.
No, like a very tree resin sweet. Almost Christmas tree like, no?
I love that. That is beautiful. This is a really unique fragrance.
Yeah.
Certainly, it gives you the picture that you're painting, which is
fantastic.
Standing beside the lake in a forest, in a dark, sort of wet sort of environment. with that sense of darkness and danger attached to it. I think it's a perfect description.
But at the same time, I reckon you could wear this anytime, you know.
Absolutely. I don't think you have to wait to be standing in the middle of a forest to be wearing this for sure. Yeah, I think it's one of those fragrances I think it's really good for winter, but you could definitely wear this in the warmer months as well. Maybe not height of summer, but I don't know. I haven't worn something like this in the height of summer. What kind of seasonality would you attach any sort of seasonality to this particular?
I think the green category is pretty versatile.
All year round.
Yeah, it doesn't really it's not like your spices or your resins where, you want to stick it to the cold, or your citruses where you want to keep it to the warmer season. The green is kind of a bit more versatile.
Okay, so I think it's time to move on to Volume 4. So what's this one called?
Yeah, so Volume 4 is from the region of Southeast Asia. It is called Penangal, and it actually has a few different names depending on the country. Each kind of Southeast Asian country has its own version. So from Laos to Cambodia to Vietnam, Indonesia, through to the Philippines, there's all different names for it. And there's very similar versions of the story. But for this purpose, I chose Penangal just because it was one of the names that would fit on the actual book. Some of the other ones were too long. So Penangal is kind of likened to a female vampire of Southeast Asia. She's a beautiful woman during the day, but when nighttime approaches, her head actually pops off and she flies around. But it's just not her head. All of her organs and innards are still attached. So it's quite a gruesome visual. And what she does is she flies around, and traditionally in houses in Malaysia were built on stilts, so she would go underneath the houses and target women who were giving childbirth. And if there was the occasion that blood from childbirth would drip through the floorboards and she would consume it, both the mother and the child would be afflicted with a wasting disease.
Wow, that is very dark.
This is the darkest tale you've told so far.
It does kind of appear across Southeast Asian kind of pop culture, even in kind of urban games as well. You'll kind of see references to the Penangal, or probably more popularly the Menananggal, which is the Filipino Tagalog version of it. And with this fragrance, it is kind of a tribute to Southeast Asia. It is my most personal fragrance. I'm of Vietnamese background, so it has a very homely, comforting feel for me, despite the dark story. But with this one, I actually played on a Filipino superstition / story as well. And so they say that if you are walking around at night near trees and you smell the sudden smell of jasmine and ylang, that means there's actually a spirit or ghost woman nearby, and it's usually a bad omen. So the fragrance is kind of based around this concept. So at its core, it is a jasmine and ylang silifleur or feature, but there's a lot of kind of whimsical accords and fruits across Southeast Asia. So what you're smelling is calamansi, papaya, pomelo, bit of coriander as well, and ginger. In the heart, it is ylang. It is ylang through and through. That's why I wanted to be the core of the fragrance. It is actually ylang pushed to the very E for maximum. So I've put the very limit. I can't go anymore. And there's about 4-5 different versions of ylang in here. Again, like similar to Nephilim, it's about kind of creating that bridge from top to the heart through to the base as well. You need kind of different elements of it. And ylang is a very special material, and it's the only one that I know that has this kind of occurrence, is where it has different grades depending on how long it's been distilled. So if it's distilled for a certain amount of time, I can't remember the time frame, probably like half an hour, it's classified as ylang 1, which is the most kind of pure and kind of elegant ylang. And then you have ylang 2, 3, and turtle, which is a complete blend of all three.
Wow.
This is floral and fruity. I can certainly see, I mean, you mentioned quite early in the show your love of classical perfumery, and I think I'm really seeing it here in this fragrance. This feels quite classical. It doesn't feel dated. It's not it's not your grandma's perfume at all, not even close, but it smells very classical. I think it gives you that, if you were to wear this, you would feel quite old world. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense because it's association as well. Ylang was used a lot more in classical perfumery. All those classic flowers, it would have had it. It's a very narcotic flower. It's a lot of jasmine as well, or in the book, I actually reference it as sampaguita, which is the Tagalog version of it because it's a nod to the story. Or nod to the reference rather. And throughout the heart notes, it's a white floral, but it's probably more of a yellow floral, which is quite unique. So there's a lot of frangipani in there as well. And you've got magnolia and linden is lime blossom. Has a very kind of sparkling character. And in the base, we have Australian sandalwood. And it's actually two types of Australian sandalwood. It's the spicatum variety and album variety as well. It's Indian sandalwood. But around the 90s, they stopped using Indian sandalwood because of overuse. It was actually close to extinction. So they stopped and it kind of disappeared from perfumery for a moment. And that's when the other varieties started coming, like Australian and New Caledonian. And can't remember exactly how long it takes, but it's about 20 or 30 years the tree has to grow before they kind of harvest it. And then you've also got a bit of clove in the base, musk and cedar.
It instantly transports me, having travelled through different parts of Asia, back to the place, which I love. And I think, if you like these florals, there's no way you're not going to love this. Did you say it was a soliflor? It's not quite, but a soliflor.
Yeah, a soliflor.
It's very much that profile, and to me, I just think it's amazing.
A soliflor in the stricter term is just like the feature of one flower or accord. In this instance, it is a kind of combination jasmine ylang at the very core.
Yeah, I think intoxicating is probably
it's a very
the word.
pretty fragrance without being feminine, or actually, that's not the right way to say it. It is feminine, but it's not overly feminine. So this is absolutely. I would wear this in a heartbeat. I love this.
I actually love you to wear it.
Yeah, I like this
because it's different from what you would normally wear.
It's pretty, and the reason why I'm saying it's pretty, right? It's probably just to contrast against this very dark story that we've got here, and it's not to say the dark story fits as well. It's taking us to Asia. It's got that beautiful story that's woven through it, where you can see this dark spirit sort of floating all the way through these homes, all the way through Asia. And we've seen these type of houses that you're referring to in Thailand and
Humidity.
Vietnam.
You really smell the smell, don't you? When you walk past some of those bushes of whatever the flower is. Where I grew up in South Africa, we had a lot of frangipani, so I know that smell, and it's definitely a scent memory for me. But it kind of all blends together in this fragrance.
I think this is what I'm really loving about Grimoire, is just this contrast that you've got with the dark tail, yet the contrasting beautiful fragrance, and they blend beautifully together.
Yeah, and the fragrance are a reflection of my experiences as well. At the end of the day, it's how I interpret the story, and it's my life experience coming into play. I really wanted this to smell like the humid summer of Southeast Asia, when all the flowers are blooming and they're intoxicating, and it's a bit heady. Yeah,
this smells a bit like that. It smells like that island that we had our honeymoon, Phu Quoc Island. That smell. That's where it takes me back to.
Takes you back there. It's cool.
Love it.
Definitely.
That's a great memory for me. So yes, thank you for taking us there. That is beautiful.
So today I did bring, instead of the raw materials, because I think we usually know what jasmine smells like, and the absolute is pretty close to the natural flower. I actually brought in some of my accords today. So I brought in the calamansi accord.
Oh, cool.
For those that don't know what calamansi is, it is just a little citrus. Very similar to kumquat. It's very popular in Filipino and Malaysian cuisine. And I've brought in a papaya accord as well, which I really love. It is probably my most complex accord. I actually wanted to use more of it, but it just didn't work for the fragrance. So it's a bit more of a supporting note in Penangal. The reason I chose these two is it's quite contrasting. The calamansi accord is only a 3 material accord, whereas the papaya is probably well over 50.
Wow. Okay.
And you put these accords together yourself?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not the one that you go to Robote or IFF or any of those sort of houses. You're building these yourself.
And they're quite obscure accords or obscure notes as well. So there isn't really like a base formula for them. So I've had to really kind of just, trial and error and intuition as well. And the calamansi is a bit more of a green calamansi. So with calamansi, you have green and then you have the ripe where it's more orange. The green is a lot more kind of very bitter and very piercing. If you've ever had Filipino ice cream, there's a beautiful one on Russell Street. They do calamansi ice cream, and it's so refreshing, but it's almost so bitter it kind of burns your tongue a little bit.
So, I don't think I ever have, so it might be something for us to try sometime.
I guess, Trung, I don't know what calamansi is. So I'm sort of nodding along like I do. I don't know what it is. What is calamansi?
Yeah, so it's just this tiny little citrus, very similar to kumquat. The orange form of it smells pretty close to mandarin, but the green is quite more interesting. Yeah, I'll let you experience it.
So how many individual ingredients did you?
This is only a 3 material.
Okay,
it's very
smell.
bright and uplifting.
Oh yes, isn't that delicious?
Yeah.
Wow, I sort of want to have a sip. I'm sure I won't like it if I do, but this smells magical. Well, I can't believe you can get that out of just 3 different ingredients. That is super fresh.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, now I understand how that's working within the fragrance there.
Yeah, so it's the very opening accord of the fragrance.
Yeah, that blast of freshness.
Correct.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, and this next one, you said has got quite a lot of different.
Yeah, so my most complex accord, and for anyone who knows perfumery, you know what I mean when I say this. Your tropical fruits are probably some of the hardest accords to execute. Just because with a lot of fruit molecules, they lean very berry or plum or peach. There's not really much there's not much movement you can do with it. And papaya, it's a tropical fruit, and one of the best ways to make something smell a bit more ripe is actually to work with sulfurs. Just gives it a more lively kind of quality to it.
So it's a fantasy accord, right?
Yeah.
We love the smell of papaya, don't we? Fantastic. Let's have a smell. Papaya is just one of those just really beautiful
that's
fruits.
Gorgeous as well. Yum, you could eat it.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of this accord. Maybe I'll do something with it.
Yeah.
Something else with it in the future.
It's the wrong way to describe it, but this is the only way I can. It's like photorealistic.
Yeah.
This is like very, very accurate. Wow. And you've built this from how many did you say again?
Over 50.
50 different ingredients. Wow. How long did it take you to make this?
Actually, not that many. I did review my formulas briefly before I came here. This was only 4 attempts.
Wow. All right. So obviously, the practice over time, you build the skills and then you start to get a sense that you're going in the right direction as you start to build these.
Yeah. And it comes with a bit of experience, and, you have to look to things at a kind of widened lens, almost like a kaleidoscope, if that makes sense. You kind of have to deconstruct it visually, because it's not just about what the fruit smells like. You got to get the peel, the seeds, what's immediate around it, what tree is it hanging on, what's the humidity around it, how ripe you want it, the soil. So, you kind of look through things, more of a wide lens.
So as your palette builds and I guess your knowledge builds, it just gets a bit easier to start.
Yeah, definitely.
To do it. So it's not always just a slog, a battle to try and, create something.
It depends on what it is. Some things, I love doing accords. It's one of my favorite kind of tasks or practices to do.
You're very talented. That's amazing.
But yeah, I think it's just really fun. And, an accord doesn't necessarily always have to be hyper realistic. That's just personally what I like to do. You can do an accord any way you like. For example, my rose accord, I want it to be very green, but some people like it more powdery or more sweet or more gourmandist to fit into the perfume. But yeah, it just depends on which way you want to take it. Some accords I find are really hard. It's do lean more to some things than others. I attempted an iris probably a few years ago and have not been successful, but I'll get there one day.
Plugging away at it. And that is the word I was trying to find of hyper-realistic, photorealistic. That's the right word to describe that papaya. It's hyper-realistic. That smells like you've just cut open the most ripe, most fresh papaya. It's absolutely gorgeous. Wow. Amazing. Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we should move on to our final fragrance here. And this would be Volume 5. So just while Rob's grabbing that and spraying it out on what I have to say, absolutely beautiful blotters that go along with the theme, and we'll make sure that we transpose this onto the screen as well. We'll take some photos of these beautifully branded blotters here for Grimoire. So what is this final fragrance from Volume 5 called?
Yeah, so Volume 5, originally I actually wasn't intending to do a 5th fragrance. I was very content on 4. Again, I don't know, odd numbers just look nicer, so I had to do something. So it was a bit of a last minute thing, and it was probably one that I struggled the most on conceptually. Like, I didn't know where I was going with it. But eventually I did land on something. And this is called Kotoblepas. In modern Greek, you say Kotovlepas because the B changed to a V at some point in the Greek language, or the pronunciation of it.
Oh, yeah.
But the story is actually from East Africa or the region of Ethiopia, which is very similar to Ethiopia. It just has an A at the front. And the ancient region of Ethiopia is modern day kind of East Africa, Egypt, a bit of Sudan, a bit of Ethiopia as well.
Yeah.
And the story goes, the Catoblepas is a creature, a beast rather, and is somewhere between a Cape buffalo and a wildebeest. And if you ever meet its gaze, you are turned to stone and you die. So it has parallels to the Gorgon, but the difference in this story is its head is actually so heavy that it always looks down. There's kind of an implicit message there. So if you actually turn to stone, it's because of your own curiosity.
Interesting. So there's a bit of a lesson in there for you as well.
Yeah. So with this one, I played on this idea of the story being, not looking or trying not to look. So it's about removing visual cues. I love Fragrantica. I'm always on it. I always like to see what the notes are. But, like you guys said earlier, there's something kind of very beautiful about not being told what you're smelling. It is kind of purposefully offbeat, purposely peculiar. You're actually not quite sure what you're smelling.
I'm so glad you said that because there is a lot,
There's a lot going on.
In my head, there's a lot going on. Yeah, it's spicy, but there's some sort of florally something.
Something in the
too.
back there. It's hard to describe. It's hard to pin this one down. Certainly, the first sense I get of it is is spice.
Yeah.
But as Rob said, there's something playing on the peripheral there that it's mysterious as well.
And it's in kind of the overdoses I work in. And each fragrance kind of represents an overdose of something. The first one is Nephilim is the overdose of rose. The second is immortal from Todorat. And number 3 is the overdose of fur. So there's a lot of fur in there. Penangal is the overdose of ylang. And with this one is actually a big feature of your resins, and particularly myrrh.
Okay.
So myrrh is an interesting material. It's often misunderstood. I think we, for whatever reason, tend to think we know what it smells like, just because it's so prevalent in, stories, the nativity story as well with the three kings.
Frankincense and myrrh.
Yeah, like it appears in kind of modern, well, not modern, but in culture a lot. So we have this kind of false sense of familiarity. But yeah, it is not really that resinous of a smell. It's actually quite metallic. It has this blood-like quality to it, and yeah, you kind of see examples in metallic fragrances that have like kind of blood accords, like for example, Secretions Magnifique. It has that blood accord. I mean, they're actually using myrrh along with nitriles, but yeah, the myrrh is quite present in there.
I didn't know that, but you're so right about myrrh. But as we've been on our fragrance journey, I have acknowledged to myself that I don't really know what myrrh smells like. That's great.
It's always coupled together with frankincense in every story. And so you automatically associate it with frankincense. But frankincense smells quite different. And we actually get exposed to frankincense quite a lot in fragrance.
Yeah. And I work a lot with frankincense as well. Like it's not kind of listed in a lot of my notes, but it's probably in 4 out of 5 of my fragrances. And I love incense. It's a very acquired category. Some of my favorite perfumes are incense, like Avignon from Comme des Garçons or La Liturgie des Heures from Jovoy. So I love it. And Bois d'Argent from Armani, of course. That was kind of my baby. But myrrh is the topic here. And yeah, here it is for you guys to smell.
Wow.
Which is quite different from the essential oil. The essential oil is quite citrusy because it's got a lot of terpenes in it.
This is going to be quite an experience because I have never smelt a raw myrrh before.
No, me neither.
Okay, that is not what I expected at all. Well, okay. Yeah, now I can identify it. It's really worth training your nose here, isn't it? How would you describe that? I can't even describe it. Can you form words to describe that? I can't. We're going to...
Yeah. It's, like it is a resin. Like it falls under the resin family. But yeah, metallic. Almost has like this kind of melted plastic element to it as well. Really great for grounding fragrances and giving them texture and dimension.
Yeah, resinous and sticky, and I can sort of see what you mean now when you say that melted plastic.
Yeah.
Not off-putting, but it's a good description of it.
Yeah, it's not like sticky like benzoin or benzoin. It's kind of closer to Sterix Absolute as well in a way.
Really tricky. So you built, so this is sort of the hero ingredient in this particular fragrance. So it's quite spicy. What are some of the spices that we're smelling?
Yeah, so what you're actually smelling in the fragrance, I'll reveal it to you now. So it is a nod to East Africa. So a lot of the spices and ingredients come from there. So in the very opening, you've got Cardamom Absolute. This is another Alamar material, so it's really beautiful. The cardamom is from Guatemala, though. You also have fenugreek, which is that kind of that spiced maple quality you're getting. This is from Egypt. You've got turmeric, got lavage, which is in a quarter made as well, which is kind of like this kind of somewhere between parsley, coriander, celery kind of root vegetable.
Never heard of lavage either, have you?
Maybe in cooking.
Yeah, it's used more in cooking.
Okay.
But again, not for a very long time. Not like I'm making it at home.
Yeah.
Okay, lavage.
Yeah, in the heart, it is all about incense. And I list the note as incense because there's a lot of different things going on. Incense is usually in a accord. It's usually not just frankincense on its own.
Okay.
Usually you create an incense accord with a mix of cedarwood, olivinum, which is frankincense, and also labdanum, which is very important to an incense accord.
Okay.
And yeah, the incense I'm using is actually a co-distillate. Have you guys kind of gone through co-distillates before?
No, never heard of it.
Yeah, so co-distillates, they are when two materials are actually extracted at once. So this is Boiled on Song from Robert Hare, and it is a co-distillation of olivinum, or frankincense, as well as cedarwood.
Wow.
So it has a very different character than when you take two oils and blend them together. I'm not a chemist, but yeah, something happens at a molecular level when you distill it together. And the way I think about it is like, it's kind of like when you cook two ingredients together versus adding two different sauces together.
Okay, so it more integrates.
Correct.
Okay, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, it's another intriguing fragrance to me. It smells smoky, but it's also almost like a char kind. There's like something charry, I want to say almost like meaty.
This is so up my alley. I love this. This is so spicy, and I love spicy fragrances as well, or incense fragrances. I mean, Encens Soir from Matière Premier is one of my favorite sort of fragrances.
It's a great kind of blend of a gourmand incense. It's a lot more of an approachable incense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just absolutely gorgeous. I'm absolutely getting the cardamom there in the opening.
Yeah.
And now that you've identified some of these more abstract ingredients for me, I'm starting to get that.
Yeah.
that
and
sense of it
I'm
as
using both the essential oil and the absolute. The essential oil is a lot more sharp and bright and has almost like this kind of mentholic kind of terpenol acetate quality to it, whereas the absolute is more closer to how you smell it in real life, especially green cardamom.
It's very,
it's
very
lovely.
suave fragrance to me, isn't it? Like, this is a suit type of fragrance.
And then in there's just a hint of coffee as well. It's a very small hint. It is a jungle essence, which is just a trade name from Maine for the CO2 extract. And yeah, it just has a little bit of bitterness to it. Because the CO2 extracts are kind of closer to headspace, not quite headspace, but closer to how you smell it in real life. And that's just a nod to the fact that Ethiopia is actually the birthplace of coffee.
Very cool.
This is absolutely beautiful. I've got to say, the whole range is absolutely beautiful. You've done an amazing job. Usually I will sort of press and say, hey, what particular season is this one suitable to? But what I think you've managed to achieve with all of these fragrances is they're all incredibly versatile. You can wear these any time of the year. You pick up any one of these and you can wear it all year round. I think you've straddled the line of unisex quite well as well. So lean a little bit feminine, some lean a little bit masculine. I think this one sort of leans a little bit masculine, but not something that Robin couldn't wear.
I do want to touch on that topic a bit because I do get asked this a lot. Is it masculine or feminine or unisex? And my answer to that is always, I'll just leave it up to you to decide. And I'd say that in the most unpretentious way possible. To me, perfume is simply an inanimate object. So just let it speak to you the way it does. And, the idea kind of masculine, feminine, even the word unisex or genderless now, they're all very strong marketing terms. If you look at perfumery prior to the 50s, there was no kind of segregation or distinction of either. But, it has its purpose as a selling tool. It plays on human psychology, this idea of solidarity that, if you wear something masculine, then, you're doing the right thing. You're putting yourself into that group. It's just the way the human mind works with classification. But and that's kind of part of my brand ethos as well. Is just kind of bring back the old and these classical, not even ideas, just the way it was.
Yeah, and a lot of this is just taken root in modern marketing of perfumery. It's funny that you say this because when I mentioned to people, so I've got a day job, I work in a corporate environment, and I tell people that, I love perfumery and that I interview perfumers. The first question I usually get is, oh, do you also do men's fragrances? I'm like, well, perfume isn't women's and cologne men's, but it's just because the marketing machine has done such a good job of this. It's said that perfume is for females and cologne is for males, and that there is male and there is female, and that there is this line in the sand. And you walk into, you've come from retail, right? You walk into any retail environment, it's calling out this is female and this is male, and it's actually
we've been conditioned to think that way, and it has its purpose, it has its function, but I think when it kind of opens up your mind a lot, and you become a lot more free with perfume when you kind of just take a departure from these ideas and concepts.
100% agree. And, I think that's one of the fantastic things about both of us having this same, I guess, we both love fragrance. Obviously, I've got my collection and Trent's got his, but, the fact that if I do feel like just trying something, experimenting with something from his side of the display, I do. And, I have found some fragrances that I really love that I might not have gone off and purchased a full bottle of myself, So I guess that's one of the beauties of the discovery set as well, is that, you've got that opportunity to explore and enjoy all of the fragrances, and you can often be surprised. And I remember when we were talking to Amanda from Siono, she mentioned that people sometimes will have an idea of which fragrance they're going in to buy, and
Correct.
then when they explore the full range, they'll walk away with a different fragrance.
And that's something I've experienced as well. I've only been live for a couple of weeks now, but some of the reviews I've started to see pop up online, there's a common theme that they captivated by the one they thought they would be least. So it's very interesting. And the notes are quite scary the way I've kind of curated them. They're a bit hard to conceptualize as well because it's such a big kind of list, but I didn't want to leave anything out.
Yeah, the notes don't always tell the tale, do they? There's been plenty of occasions where I've jumped onto Fragrantica and gone, that set of notes is my jam for sure. And then I've ordered the fragrance blind, done the blind buy, and I've got it, and I've not been the biggest fan of it, even though I've gone, but I've got other fragrances that have got all of these notes, because we don't include all of the notes. And some of the notes, as we've discovered on the show today, we're just implying that they're there. We're planting the seeds, but they're not actually there. There's something else. So you have to, as much as we do our best on this show to describe notes and describe fragrances, there is no substitute for smelling the fragrances yourself, and you do. And not only do you need to smell these fragrances, and this is a common mistake that people make when they go and buy fragrances, is they'll walk into Myer, David Jones, wherever it might be, they'll spray it on and go, I love it, and they walk out. And they don't do the dry down like we're doing today. And so then they go home and they go, why don't I like it as much? Or why does this smell different? Well, you've just gone past the opening notes. Now you're in the heart. You've gone through the heart. Now you're sitting in the base. You're getting quite a different profile than you had in that 5 minute, in the store. So, but I'm glad you've addressed the unisex piece, because this has been our experience. And Rob mentions that she occasionally wanders over to my side. No, she doesn't. She wanders over to my side very, very often. But having said that, I wander over to her side. And so we don't really have a side. We just love each other's fragrances. It's whatever grabs us on that day. How do I feel? This is one of the joys of our morning, is you're having a shower and you're going, what do I want to express to the world today? And that's what you pick up and you wear. Not, is this male? Is this female? Is this suitable? It's just however you want to feel. It's very an emotional art, I think.
Yeah. I have the same dilemma every morning. I open my cabinet. I'm like, I don't know what to wear. A lot of the times I forget to wear anything subconsciously. But I do find I always go back to a few similar ones. Like, I love green fragrances. But funnily enough, I wear very light things.
Okay.
Your journey evolves and you enjoy different things throughout your kind of perfume journey. But I've just landed on very light colognes, very green or roses, which is really interesting. Very different to my work and different to things I wore 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that evolves over time as well, doesn't it? And I also love going back to, we've got hundreds of samples as well, going back to those fragrances that we didn't like years ago and smelling them again and going, now that my my nose has evolved and my palate has evolved, I'm actually appreciating those fragrances a bit more. So before we close this section out, I just wanted to touch on one thing. And when you were talking about Penangal, you said that you were using, I think it was a ylang ylang, and that you pushed it to the edge of what you can do within IFRA regulations, right? So I guess I'm just curious from your perspective, how do you perceive IFRA? Like, is it challenging to work with IFRA? Is it something that you value? I mean, what's your impressions of IFRA, given that we hear every single day that something else is being banned and something else has changed and some other regulation and people are having to reformulate? What's your view?
Yeah, so it's a very kind of heated and passionate topic for perfumers and for consumers as well, because they feel like they're losing something they love because it has to be changed for compliancy reasons. For those that don't know, IFRA stands for the International Fragrance Association, and it's kind of like a self-regulating body for the perfume industry because the government doesn't really get involved, which is a good thing. That's the silver lining, because the government will probably impose a lot more strict rules and regulations for ingredients. So IFRA, it is purely a recommendation of what you should and shouldn't use, but there is kind of logic behind it as well. There is research and study and a lot of toxicology behind it, toxicological data, and it serves a function for safety and limiting liability as well. So I think there is a misconception, and I was of this school of belief as well before I created my brand or started building the brand, that non-compliance would mean or rebelling against it would mean there'll be more creative freedom and more artistic value to your work. But when you actually start reading everything and you understand why IFRA exists and the purpose it serves, it doesn't really apply too much to Australia, but actually only applies in the EU or EU countries. But as a business, you have to make that decision. For me, in my mind, before I even started perfumery, I always said to myself that I would love to have my creations be taken to an international stage. So part of that means compliancy as well, or being compliant to EU. And EU it's the toughest kind of rule set there is. And it's a conscious business decision you have to make. But upon kind of after formulating, working with my perfumes and creating them, it's actually not as stringent as people think it is. There is a lot of freedom and you still have a lot of leeway to work with a lot of different materials. And there's a lot of substitutes as well that you could easily work with. I kind of think it's like coloring within the lines. And I feel like I haven't really sacrificed any creative outlet or whatever you want to call it, kind of creative energy by being compliant. And I've actually think it's quite important as well. Like when you read these things, like, granted you take it with a grain of salt because these restrictions are probably a lot more strict than they need to be, but that's just, again, better safe than sorry, as if with anything. Same with like civil engineering, for example, amount of weight something can carry is usually that is explicitly stated is probably 5 times lower than what it can actually load. So it's the same with IFRA. But when you read the kind of data and the reason why things are banned, it makes sense. There's carcinogens, of course, there's genotoxins, photosensitivity, allergens, sensitizers, all things that can affect the human body. But again, you do have to take a grain of salt. And I think for any new perfumers out there or brands out there that are being of non-compliant, my word of advice is just to do your research first and your due diligence to understand why these rules and regulations exist. And then you can kind of bend the rules intelligently. I think if you're non-compliant without doing your due diligence, there is an element of neglect because, these are things we're putting in our body and they do have an effect, whether that's straight away or long-term. Like there's just not enough data and testing to, substantiate it. So it is better to be safe in that case. With IFRA, there is kind of like a secondary component as well, which is not talked about as much, which is Annex 2, which is kind of like the cosmetics law in EU. Where IFRA is a recommendation, Annex 2 is the law, so you can't go against it. So there is a list of materials that Annex 2 bans. Usually they're under the category of CMR substances. It is either carcinogen, mutagens, reprotoxicity. Again, some of this is politically charged, heated debate, or touchy subject as well. And, again, it's the government's way of limiting liability, and they're taking more of an extreme approach. And in 2027, there's a new proposal for a lot of handful of materials to be listed into Annex 2. One of them is heliotropin, which is a very much loved material. When I saw this, I was telling my friends, this is big news, and they didn't care. They didn't understand. I think it will shake up the whole perfume industry. Heliotropin is one of the main odorants for heliotrope flower. It's also known as cherry flower, so it has this very almondy cherry note to it. But it's in a lot of legacy fragrances. Think of like Galan, Le Bleu, and in any kind of almond or cherry note or a chord, it would be used in quite a significant amount because there's actually no current restriction on it. One of the other main ingredients for the cherry note is benzaldehyde, but that's a lot more restricted. And there's not very many kind of molecules that can replace heliotropin. Not many that I can think of. Actually, there's paratolutaldehyde, which is like a maraschino cherry, but yeah, there's not very many molecules that can replace it. Yeah, it's strange because it's a molecule that's been out for over 100 years, and all of a sudden it is proposed to being banned, and you're not sure what drives it. Apparently, it's listed as a reproductive toxicity.
Okay, yep. Okay. Hormone disruptor or whatever.
Yeah, so it sounds scary. Again, you got to take these things with a grain of salt. I think it's a shame. Even because, the data is a lot of it is kind of inflated. The testing they do is in magnitudes way above real world exposure, sometimes 10,000 to 100,000 times more than what you're actually exposed to. So, I think one of the other reasons that it might be in the spotlight is that heliotropin is actually a precursor for opium. But again, that's not new news though. It's a known thing. And what manufacturers usually do is they dilute it before you buy it, so it can't be manipulated or synthesized further.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So in terms of IFRA, it is a regulating body out of Europe, but in Australia, you don't need to comply.
No.
So you could produce non-IFRA compliant fragrances with no repercussions whatsoever. But part of what you're saying, if I'm reading you correctly here, is that you're giving some advice to perfumers out there that IFRA aren't just throwing things out there for the sake of it, and that they're giving advice for a very good reason here, and that if you are going to be non-compliant, then be smart about it, because some of these materials have been banned for a very good reason, because they do irritate. They can be carcinogenic, which means that they can cause cancer. And so there is a sense of responsibility that you should have for your consumer, possibly down the track liability as well. IFRA are helping guide perfumers so that they're not in that situation in the first place.
Australia is I'm surprised we don't have more regulation, or actually any regulations at all around it, around perfumery. Like there are some things that are banned, for sure. But even on Australian packaging, you don't need to list any allergens. It's not part of the compliancy. You might be part of compliancy for, being stocked somewhere, but as a Australian law, you actually don't need to.
It's amazing considering how strict this country is. This area is so, I guess, unregulated. It's absolutely fascinating. Well, that was an absolute joy to go through that broader range and to have that discussion around IFRA. But we still do have our base notes to go through here. So I'd love to return to our base notes. We should have those developing on our skin. In fact, I just had a little sniff before, but we absolutely do have our base notes coming through. But before we jump in and we get you to take us through the base notes, let's return to our perfume pyramid. So we're now at the very bottom of our pyramid. So we've gone through our opening notes at the very top, our heart notes right in the middle, and we're right at the base. Our base notes are effectively the opposite of those opening notes. So while our opening notes are very light, they're very volatile, our base notes are very dense, and they are the notes that stick to our skin and provide the longevity in the fragrance. So when we talk about a fragrance lasting for 6 hours or 8 hours or 14 hours or however long it might last, it's actually those base notes that are providing that longevity and bolstering some of those heart notes and making them last. With all of that said, in terms of base notes, let's have a little sniff and then take us through what we're actually smelling here.
Yeah, so in terms of the perfume pyramid, Nephilim is super base heavy. Just roughly speaking from memory, I think it probably represents 70% of the formula, and the heart's about probably 25-ish. and the top is about 6%, give or take. Yeah, so it's a very tiny tip of the pyramid, but the core of it is the base. And what you're smelling is a lot of patchouli. There's actually a few different patchouli compounds in here. I did bring patchouli for you guys to smell, which is a crystal material, but it's the raw isolate that gives patchouli its distinct odor. There is a lot of musk as well, and there's a few different musks molecules. And generally in perfumery, it is always not just one musk molecule. Musk are actually probably in every single perfume. It's just not listed.
Okay.
It is the most effective way to fixate a fragrance, but also to clean it up. I find musk kind of help to flatten a fragrance that might be too sharp, and just kind of helps everything meld together. Now, the reason why there's always a few musks because the human nose is actually naturally anosmic to a few different musks just naturally. So by putting in a few, you give everyone the opportunity to smell a type of musk. They do smell different. You can train your nose to smell it over time, but at a base level, usually you're either anosmic to galaxolide or ethylene brassylate or vice versa. And what you're also smelling in the base is tolu balsam, a lot of labdanum, hints of civet, which is kind of one of the star chords in there for me. I think that's it.
I really like the dry down of this fragrance. You still have the rose there.
Yeah, the rose is still there, for sure.
But it's just not as strong. And as you say, you've got these musks and it's warm and it's patchouli sort of comes through. I feel like the patchouli comes through earlier as well on my skin anyway. And then as it dries down, you know it's there, but it's not as, as much of a hero on my skin.
It's a beautiful patchouli, isn't it?
I think it's a pretty dark and dirty patchouli. Yeah. I purposely use Indian patchouli, which is very raw and unfiltered.
Yeah, it's quite sweet on my skin. That's a bit dirtier on your...
There is vanilla absolute in the base as well, which kind of gives it that sweetness and just helps to round it out. But yeah, it's a very dark and dirty patchouli that I've gone for. And this is like kind of like, it is a good quality one, but sometimes things work when you don't use the top of the range, if that makes sense. Like it has its function there. Because there's a lot of purified patchoulis, which are a lot cleaner, that contain a lot more of that patchouli raw essence. Not because there's more, because there's less of everything else. So by percentage, it has more patchouli in it, which I'll let you guys smell, actually.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I love what this is doing on my skin.
It's very lovely.
It's really beautiful. Have another smell. Let's have a smell on you. It smells so different on our skin.
Yours is more patchouli-ish. What do you think it is that you're smelling?
The rose is hanging around on my skin. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
This is patchouli or patchouli alcohol. It's a crystalline material at room temperature.
Wow.
And this is like the main odorant molecule of patchouli, or what we associate with patchouli.
Like fresh dirt, isn't it? To me, anyway.
Patchouli. Is it? Patchouli. Wow, I'm butchering that. Oh, yeah, it's very, very dirty.
Yeah, patchouli is one of those funny materials. It's had a bit of a wave throughout the decades. Like, obviously, it was big in the 70s because of the hippie kind of era of the movement. Yeah. We were just, not me, but, people were just spraying patchouli skin on the skin. It kind of disappeared in the 80s because of that association. Came back in the 90s with the Angel from Mugler. I always say that Angel really changed the fragrance world. All your modern gourmands are as a result of it. All your modern florals, all your modern sheeps, it really changed the world. But truly, it's a fascinating material. It has a very human quality to it. Fun facts, patchouli actually has a compound or smell compound that you find in human foot odor, really random. Also has a compound that is found in chocolate as well. So that's why sometimes you do find a lot of patchouli in gourmands because it works well with chocolate. One of the earliest examples is Reminiscence from 1970, but Psychedelic from Javoy, which is a bit more of a modern example. Yeah, so it's a very multifaceted material. It's very earthy, herbal, medicinal. But the kind of star ingredient here that I wanted to kind of highlight is the civet accord. This is a vegan accord. Now, not all of my perfumes are vegan. That's just a decision I've made. I'm not a vegan person, so I don't carry that philosophy into my perfumes. But for all intents and purposes, this one is vegan because I didn't need to use the real stuff. Civet it's an old kind of note. Again, it's found a lot in vintage perfumery. I always say Nephilim is probably my biggest nod to the classical era with the civet note. For those that don't know what actual civet is, it is kind of like a cat-like animal, and its glands produce this very fecal kind of smell, which works very well in low doses. It's a great fixative as well. But yeah, pairs really well with florals and classic sheep structures. The idea of a civet in this fragrance was to represent or play on this notion of like pheromones. It adds a very innate carnal energy to it, and it plays on that, like I said at the very start, this kind of dichotomy of desire and discomfort.
So this civet accord, did you build this accord?
Not separately. I just kind of built it into the fragrance as I was working with it. So I didn't have a separate accord and put it into the blend. There's about 4 or 5 different molecules that I've just kind of adjusted inside the fragrance itself.
I think what we're getting at the base here is it's really quite a deep fragrance. It's a dark, deep fragrance that we're getting here out of Nephilim. I'm a massive fan, and I'm really glad that you selected this particular fragrance to showcase here today. It really is gorgeous. They all are. I'm not sure I could definitively say which one's my favorite because they've all got their own place. And I know you were struggling with that concept of the fifth. The fifth has really rounded out this first part of the collection quite well.
I think it's a great way. Again, I didn't intend this, but now that I look back in hindsight, was a great way to close a collection. In the same way a fashion show closes the collection, the final piece is always a nod to everything else in a way. Cartoblepas is the fragrance that uses or recycles, not in a bad way, but it recycles a lot of the accords I've used in the other 4 fragrances. So it's all about cohesion.
Great to know.
So if somebody wanted to experience all of these fragrances without necessarily buying an entire bottle, do you actually do a discovery pack?
Yes, I do. Comes in a little grimoire as well, just half as big.
Fantastic. Let's take a look. We've actually been looking at this through the course of the show. Again, it's like a smaller version of the of the box here. It's beautiful. We'll look to superimpose that onto the screen as well. But so this is a collection of all 5 fragrances within the discovery set, and they can purchase that straight off your website.
Yep. So our website, just www.grimoireparfums.com.au. Yeah, please check it out. It's a great way to explore the collection, but also because each fragrance is so highly stylistic, I do recommend it. Each fragrance takes you on a different journey. Yeah.
I think it's definitely worth spending some time with these fragrances because they're very unique. And so definitely jump onto the website. So for those people who are watching at home on YouTube, we'll put the website on the screen now at the bottom of the screen. Of course, for those people who are listening on Spotify or you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we'll embed the Grimoire website straight into the description to make it nice and easy for you to find. And of course, you can always come to our website. We'll put a profile of Grimoire and of Trung on our website. So on your screen now, you'll have a QR code. Just grab your phone, scan that QR code. That will take you to olfactive.com.au, where we'll have a full profile of Grimoire along with a link back to the website so you can find it nice and easily and purchase these beautiful perfumes and the discovery pack.
Yeah. Now, Trung, I know it might be a bit too soon to ask, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Yes.
What is next? What's the next sort of thing that you're up?
So there's a few things in the line for me. I am in the middle of producing some travel sizes, both for kind of practicality and function, but also for accessibility. I know 50 mils might be a lot for some people, so I think 10 mil is a great size to just carry around.
Great idea. I love the idea of the travel size, as you say, especially even for, collectors. A lot of them do say that they prefer to just have it. Yeah.
I have a few more ideas I'd like to execute, 3 in particular. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Maybe mid next year, which is very ambitious. So let's see how that goes.
Well, I'm not surprised that you've already got 3 sort of lined up in your mind. So I guess if people want to know when those fragrances are coming out, probably the best thing for them to do is probably follow you on your socials.
Yes, please. So just Grimoire Parfums on Instagram and grimoire.parfums on TikTok. There's also another Instagram page I run, which is just called Troy Perfumes. And that's kind of a bit more of a back end stuff. Recently just started a series called Perfumer's Bench, just to give a bit of kind of like basic insight into the perfume side as well. And, it's always a point of fascination for people to learn.
Yeah, we've been following along and we're learning from that as well because this is really just like what we do on this podcast as well. It's all about education. So we love that you're doing that.
Yep. Thank you so much. I've had an absolutely amazing time, and thank you for bringing in not just the amazing fragrances for us to experience, but also all of these absolutes and essential oils and amazing raw ingredients, which has really added another dimension to the whole experience. It's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been
Yeah.
an amazing masterclass, an amazing journey through fragrance.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. It's been really fun, and it's you don't really get the opportunity sometimes to talk perfume at this capacity. So it's just me kind of perfume vomit for you guys.
We love it. I mean, we geek out
do.
on this stuff, and
Yeah.
I think our viewers love it as well. Just getting that next layer down of really the depth behind the art form, because there's an art to this. We love to discover more.
Absolutely.
So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and give us a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. See you next time for another episode of Olfactive Melbourne podcast and the stories of the perfumes and the perfumers behind them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.